Hi, I'm Chef Julia Dunaway, and today I'm going to be making some plant-based nachos. And I'm calling these my award-winning nachos because they actually won an award about a week ago. We had a local Texas Chefs Association at our Fort Worth chapter meeting nacho contest. And my nachos were the plant-based version with corn and black beans and tofu, sausage, and lots of other vegetable toppings. And they actually were selected among all the others, the meat-based ones. My plant-based ones actually won. So I told everybody I would do a YouTube video and show how to make the plant-based nachos that I made that won the award. So that's what I'm doing today. So there are a lot of components to this, so you have to be a little patient with me. I'm going to start with, I'll show you the ingredients, and then I'll kind of walk through how we're going to put them together. So of course, the first thing, or the nachos are made from chips. So I have this huge pile of tortilla chips, but everything I make is no oil. So I made these tortilla chips by taking plain old corn tortillas, cutting them in fourths, laying them on a parchment lined baking sheet. So I had to have like 3 big baking sheets at 400 degrees for about 8 minutes. And then I let them sit there with the oven door open for another 10 minutes. And I left them there, and because of that, they dried out. So they're crispy, just like regular chips. And they taste, very good. They don't have salt, so they're salt-free, but they have a really good crunch, and they're not fried. So that's how I make my chips. And then as far as the toppings, I like to use some kind of bean. So I made some from scratch black beans. These are Rancho Gordo midnight beans. They're really good. I make them all the time, and I made these in the Instant Pot. One of the things I make in the Instant Pot, one of the few things I make, is black beans because they tend to turn out well. I cook them on high pressure for about 40 minutes, and they come out perfect every time. So I will put the recipe for that too in the show notes. So make whatever beans you want. You can use any kind of pinto beans, red beans, just anything, whatever you have on hand. You could use canned beans. I'm not the biggest fan of canned beans anymore because I have a quarterly subscription to Rancho Gordo beans. I have a pantry full of beans, dried beans, that I have to use up. So I try not to buy canned beans anymore, but I know not everybody makes beans from scratch. So buy your favorite beans, rinse them, drain them well, and there you have beans for your nachos. Then we're also going to have grilled corn, and I wanted to show you one of the ears of corn that I cooked. It has a little bit of the silk still on it. But this ear, I made 3 ears of corn, and I made them outside on my gas grill, grilled them until they were charred. It was about 15 minutes total on a pretty hot grill. Started out hot, I turned it down. And then what I do after that is I just take my sharp knife and cut the kernels off. And that way I have these freshly grilled corn kernels, and they go really well on the nachos, the ones I like to make. If you don't want to mess around with fresh corn, you can just use some frozen corn or canned corn, whatever you have. It's summertime here, it's June right now, so corn is very available in the grocery store. So because of that, it's easy to get fresh, delicious corn, and it tastes really good. So it's one of those seasonal ingredients that I like to have around, and then wash my knife off. So, use things that are in season. That's always a good idea. And if it's winter time and you're making these and you can't get good corn, of course, you're going to use your favorite canned corn or your favorite frozen corn, whatever, but summertime corn. And then the other thing I made, and I'll put the recipe in the show notes, is the tofu sausage or tofu chorizo or tofu taco mixture, whatever you want to call it. And it's basically just crumbled up extra firm tofu that I mixed in with tomato sauce, tomato paste, chili powder, a bunch of different spices, tahini, a little low sodium soy sauce, cooked it in a hot oven, 400 degrees. And then it turns into this delicious looking brown crumble. So that's kind of the, some people like their nachos with in the old days, you know, something that resembles a ground meat. Well, we have tofu, we have corn and beans. Those are our primary toppings. And then we have a cheese sauce. The cheese sauce is made from cashews and some vegetables. But before we make the cheese sauce, I want to show you the other topping ingredients. I'm going to move these aside since you've already seen them. And I'm going to bring the others out here because we're going to work on cutting these up shortly. But so you can see on my tray I have different bell peppers, tomatoes, sliced ripe olives, red onion. I have Fresno chilies, jalapeno, and serrano. So you could use any kind of chilies you want. We could use pickled jalapenos. I didn't get those out today, but I have a jar of pickled jalapeno peppers in my refrigerator. I could go grab those and use those, but I think I'm going to use the fresh chili peppers. And then I have, get it out of the refrigerator, trying to keep it from getting wilted. Cilantro will wilt if you let it sit out in the warm, humid air. I have some fresh cilantro and some scallions. So you can see we have a lot of different ingredients that we can put on top of our nachos. So we're going to have a lot of toppings, but we have to make our cheese sauce. I have already made one of the sauces that we're going to use on top, and that was, it'll be in your recipe. It's called Crema. And Crema is just really basically it's cashews with lemon juice and some water and a bunch of seasonings. But it makes for, like, you know, and when you have nachos and you put sour cream or some kind of creamy sauce. Well, this is the creamy sauce that we're going to be using. I didn't want to make that in this video as well because it's very similar to what we're making with cheese sauce. It just doesn't have all the same ingredients, but it's the same process. So I thought to make it simple, I'll just make one sauce. So how do you make cheese sauce without using cheese? So that's the million-dollar question, right? So we have our ingredients here. I've already kind of prepared them. I've got my blender. Set it here. And so for our cheese sauce, it's going to sound strange to you. I have a potato. This is a golden potato, like a Yukon Gold potato. I've got some cooked carrots and onion. So that's just boiled in some water for a few minutes until they got soft. I have some red pepper, roasted red peppers. And then I have some other ingredients, especially the key ingredient is the cashews. And these cashews have soaked for about an hour in water, and I drained them in my colander. And these cashews are the type of cashews you buy in any grocery store, but they're raw cashews. Costco sells a giant plastic tub of them, raw, unroasted, unsalted. It's just raw cashews, and you soak them in water anywhere from 30 minutes to a couple hours, even longer. And what that does is it softens them enough that you can make a sauce. Now, if you have a Vitamix blender, it works great, high-speed blender. And some blenders don't work as well, and the cheese sauce kind of stays a little on the grainy side, so you kind of have to watch that. Some are better than others, but, you know, for now, I think the one, you know, that I'm using with these cashews works great. Hopefully yours will too. So what else goes in the cheese sauce? We'll start putting our ingredients in here. First of all, I'm going to set these back over here out of my way. I'll start with the potato, and I'm going to peel the potato. And my recipe says a cup of potato, and this is about that amount. It's a small, medium potato, and I'm just going to cut it into a few pieces and stick it in here into my blender with the cashews. And I cooked it in the microwave, but you could boil it, whatever you want to do. It was just easy to cook it in the microwave. And then I have my carrots and onions, a half cup of carrots and a half cup of diced onions. I'm going to put that in here. And I have an ingredient that I forgot to get for vegetable broth. I'm going to run and get that really quickly. I'll leave the camera for a second. This is what happens when you work alone. If you forget an ingredient, then you're kind of, there's no one to ask. I'm usually pretty good about getting all my ingredients, but it's been a long day. Okay, 1 cup of vegetable broth. And I'm using one I like from Central Market. It's the local gourmet grocery store, and I think theirs tastes really good, so I always keep it around. But it's always better if you make your own vegetable broth from your vegetable scraps and whatever you have around, but I just didn't have any. A teaspoon of lemon juice. So I've got a fresh lemon. Teaspoon's not much, so it doesn't require a lot. And I'm just going to squeeze it in and kind of guess that that's about a teaspoon. I didn't measure it, but I kind of know. 2 tablespoons of Fresh Jack's tofu scramble seasoning. And that's just an ingredient I like, or you can substitute it with nutritional yeast. But I'm going to use this tofu scramble seasoning, which is nutritional yeast, and a couple other things. I just like it. It's from a company called Fresh Jack's. And their stuff is really good, but if you didn't have that, you can use your nutritional yeast. And I usually use this brand, Sari, S-A-R-I. I like the way it tastes. It's not doesn't have a strong, off-putting taste. So I recommend that one, but for today I'm going to be using this tofu scramble seasoning just because it's something I like and enjoy. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of that. It has a little black salt in it, which is maybe why I like it. So if you want to add black salt to your cheese sauce, you could do that and get the same kind of taste. And then it's a teaspoon of tamari, which tamari is a kind of a richer, more umami filled ingredient, soy sauce kind of ingredients made from soybeans. But tamari is, I think it's just brewed longer. It has a richer flavor. It's a little bit better tasting than soy sauce, but it's stronger, so you don't want to use too much. And then paprika, garlic powder, and cayenne are the other seasonings. So paprika, it's 1/4 of a teaspoon, not very much. So I have my little 1/4 of a teaspoon. We don't want to overdo any of the spices. And then 1/4 of a teaspoon of garlic powder and just a pinch of cayenne. So put the garlic powder in, 1/4 of a teaspoon, pinch of cayenne. Oh, and don't forget the red bell peppers. I'm going to put them in before I forget. These are the roasted red bell peppers. I drained them and put them in this 1/4 of a cup. And then our pinch of cayenne, which it's got the little sprinkle thing on, so I'll just sprinkle a little in there. People really were surprised at how good this cheese sauce is. I'm going to go ahead and get this started, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it while it's over here. So I'm over here in my Vitamix blender. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to start it on a low speed, and then I'll turn it up. Okay, the cheese sauce had plenty of time to run in the Vitamix, and we didn't have to watch it. It takes quite a while. You have to let it go long enough for it to get really smooth and silky. If it's not well blended and silky, it's not going to be any good. And how will you know it's silky? You just have to taste it. If you could still taste any kind of feel any gritty sensation on your tongue, you know, you can taste particles and it's not silky. I've had people in the past that attend my classes will tell me, well, my cheese sauce didn't turn out very well. It had little particles in it. And it's like, okay, well, you didn't process it long enough. You know, process it a little bit longer and until it really is perfect. So this turned out really well. And I'm going to take my spoon here, and I tasted it earlier, and I think it could use just a little bit of salt. So I'm going to put a couple pinches of kosher salt in it because we didn't put any salt in it. We did have vegetable broth in it that does have salt, but I think that just makes it a little bit better. So I've got my velvety, smooth cheese sauce. And remember, we also have the Crema. This is what I made earlier, which is cashews and lemon and some spices. Very similar way to make it. I let it go on high power in the Vitamix blender until it was silky smooth. That took maybe 2 minutes, but remember my cashews were soaked and so they were already really soft, and my blender is high speed and it works really well. So it doesn't usually take very long to make cashews into a really nice cream sauce. So now I'm going to make the other toppings for the nachos. I'll start with the bell peppers, and as I make them, I'm gonna put them on this plate, and then we're going to use this plate to build our nachos here in a few minutes. So I'm going to use a red bell pepper, and I'm just cutting off a couple of the sides because I have some other colorful peppers, and I'm just going to cut them into strips, and I'm going to cut the strips into little chopped pieces. So I'm really doing a sort of a small dice on these. I'll kind of rotate them. And they don't have to be perfect. You know, these are just going to be colorful squares of peppers on top of your nachos. And that's the purpose of them. And they do taste good. This is an organic bell pepper from my nice grocery store. And these organic bell peppers are not cheap. They're like, I don't even know, $3 each or something, which, you know, it's not a lot, but it's not cheap either. But they taste so good. So I just get them in my garden. I'm growing bell peppers in the garden. I have quite a few right now, but they're not quite ripe. So I have to wait a little bit before they're ready. So I have a yellow, I think I only need one of these. These are those little mini sweet bell peppers you can buy in the store. And they look really cute and they taste good. They're usually pretty sweet. So I got different colors. I have red, yellow, and orange, because I think you'll see when we assemble the nachos, it makes them look better. But you know, you don't have to use all these different colors. You could use green bell peppers if that's all you have. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But remember, I made these for a contest, so I wanted them to look really pretty, and so that's why I used all these different colors. If I was just making them for home, maybe I would just use green bell peppers, because well, I don't really have those as much anymore, but I used to always have those around. I kind of got tired of the taste of green bell peppers, and now I just use yellow and orange and red. I don't know why that is. I think I just like the taste of the more ripened ones, because you know, green bell peppers are they're a little more raw tasting, I guess. All right, so I've got a couple of tomatoes. These are the tomatoes they sell on the vine. These are not from my tomato plants. My tomatoes are bright green. They're not ripe yet. So I'm going to kind of cut around the sides of my tomatoes to keep from having a lot of wet seeds, because I just don't want to have a lot of wet seeds in here. So I'm leaving the seed part. I'll put it in my compost bin along with everything else. And I'll show you what I do with the tomatoes. Then I just cut these outside pieces of the tomato into chopped pieces, and they don't have all the seeds because we don't want to put all these really super wet ingredients on our nachos. We don't want it to be dripping with tomato seeds. Another thing you can do is you can use cherry tomato halves. If you don't want to use chopped tomatoes, you can just take cherry tomatoes and cut them in half and use those. But this is the time of year where tomatoes taste really good. So I just got some tomatoes, and I think only one is all I need. I'm gonna build one tower of nachos. Not really a tower, but one plate of nachos, because the one I made for the event that I attended was really big, but there was no reason to make one that big for my video today, because after it's done, then I would have this gigantic tower of nachos for me to eat. I'll get a paper towel here. So instead of making a huge amount, I'm going to make sort of a moderate amount. Then we have the black olives. They're already sliced. I'll put those here so we don't forget them. I think some red onions are good, so I'm going to chop the red onions. I'm going to make a couple of horizontal slices of my onion. Then I'm going to chop it into, again, like a 1/4 inch dice of these onions. We don't need this whole half of an onion, but So it's not going to hurt us to have it. What I don't use, I'll use for my salads. So there we go with the red onion. And I like the red onions because they look good. And you don't really even have to use onions on your nachos because some people don't love raw onions. They think they're too strong, but I don't have that problem with them. I think they're good. So I like them on anything. If you want to cut the sharpness of the red onion, you can soak them in vinegar or water. And if you soak the onion in vinegar or water, it kind of takes the edge off of them and they're a lot more mellow. I'm going to take a few scallions. Do you have to put scallions on here? No, not really. But again, the color, scallions are really pretty. And they have a different shape and they're a bright green. We don't have anything green for our nachos. So having some scallions gives it that color. We do have cilantro. So after I make all these toppings, we're going to make our guacamole. And we may use some of the things on my toppings tray to put in our guacamole. So I'm going to get this on here. And then, I need to cut up my peppers. So I'm going to have different peppers on my tray here. I have 3 types. I have Fresno, which is the red one, jalapeno, and serrano. This came from my garden. Just picked it right before the video. So I'm going to put some slices of jalapeno pepper. And I think that tastes really good in the nachos. I don't mind it, but some people are kind of like, they don't really like to eat raw, spicy peppers. And they, would find this objectionable if they ran across a slice of a jalapeno pepper in their nachos. So for that very reason, the other option you have is to chop your jalapenos into little minced pieces. I'm not doing that because I like the way they look in slices. But, depends on who you're feeding. When they're chopped into small pieces, they're not quite as a big mouthful. But I'll leave that up to you. I kind of like them in these big rings. And so that's why the pickled jalapeno peppers are a little bit more mellow too, because they've been pickled, so they're not quite as strong. So if you want to get away from super strong spicy peppers, you can just use the jar of pickled peppers. So, whatever you like. And then the serrano is hotter than the jalapeno. So it's small but strong. So just realize if you put those on your nachos, that whoever gets that little bit of heat might be a little upset if they're not expecting it. So remember, like I make things for the people that I'm going to be feeding, and I know that these things don't bother me because I like spicy food. I live in Texas. We eat a lot of spicy food. But if you're somewhere where people are not quite as crazy about spicy food, remember, just use some pickled jalapenos in just a small amount and chop them up really small or put them on the side and let people add them if they want. Okay, so here's our beautiful topping. See how colorful that is? And we also have our cilantro. I'm going to set this tray aside because we don't really need it. We have, as well as that, we have our colorful green cilantro. So I'll put this over here so I don't forget about it. Now let's quickly make some guacamole, and then we can assemble the nachos. So what goes into guacamole? Well, it doesn't have to be too complicated. It can be as simple as the basic guacamole is just avocado, salt, lime juice, and garlic. So we'll start with that, and then we'll add things from there. So I just like to cut the avocado in half. I'll do 2, and depending on how many people you have, if you're making a giant platter of nachos for a big crowd, you probably need a few more avocados than this. But like I said, there's not a huge crowd here, so I don't want to have enough guacamole for an army, because the only person who's going to eat it probably is me. Well, my husband might eat it, but he's not a big fan of lots of guacamole. He'll eat some. Okay, and then the part with the seeds, I scoop the seeds out with the spoon. I know the fancy way that people have seen is to take the knife and go, but I've also been to physical therapy for a broken wrist, and the physical therapist told me that one of the most common conditions they see for the hand surgery patients is where people have cut their hands from avocados. That's a very common injury, apparently, where people are messing around with their avocados holding a knife in their hand. So remember that. You know, it's it might look cool and you think, you know, I've seen people do this fancy thing, and then you do it and you're the person who gets a terrible cut. Not worth it. So I don't like to demonstrate it that way, because I don't want to be the person to tell you to do something that might give you an injury. All right, so I'm just mashing up my avocado. This turned out to be the most perfect avocado selection. No brown spots, not too ripe, not underripe. Do you know how hard it is to get good avocados? They're usually too ripe or not ripe enough. There's such a short window of time when avocados are good. It's amazing. Okay, so I did not smash them to smithereens to the point where, you know, they're all like slimy green. I like them to still have some chunks, because the more you mess with them with your fork, the more, I guess, like liquid they become. And I don't really like that consistency of guacamole when it's like turned to liquid. I'm just not a fan of it. I'm gonna take 2 garlic cloves, if I don't lose them, cut off the hard ends. If you look at your garlic clove, it has a hard end, and the hard end is really hard to do anything with. So if you cut it off, then you can smash your garlic by putting your weight on it. And when you do that, the peel comes right off very easily. You don't have to shake it in a bowl or do anything. This peel already came off. I guess I did that earlier. You don't have to shake your garlic in a bowl or use a special silicone garlic mat or any kind of special tool. You can just use your knife in your hands. And so I'm gonna chop my garlic up. It needs to be chopped up pretty finely, because you don't really want to bite into giant chunks of garlic in your guacamole. Well, I don't. Maybe you do. So the more you chop it up, the better it is. But the absolute best way to put garlic in your guacamole is to turn it into paste. So I'm going to show you how to do that, because that really mashes it up nicely to the point where it's not as apparent in there. So you take a little salt, like a pinch of salt, and then you take your knife and you just kind of hold your knife with your fingers and run the blade across the garlic. And it smashes the garlic down, and as you're doing that, you move it around. And you have to put a little weight on this. You know, it's kind of like, I'm really pressing down on this. It's not just a gentle pressure. It's kind of hard to smash the garlic. It's more than just, you know, holding my knife over it. But as I do this, I can see that my garlic has gotten really soft, and it's starting to turn into a nice garlic paste. And it's moving around, and it's perfect, because now when I put this in my guacamole, I don't have the experience of biting into a very chunky piece of garlic, which is not very good tasting to me. So I've got my garlic in there, mix it around a little bit, spread it around so it's not in one spot. Lime. So I'm going to use 1 lime, because it's only 2 avocados. If I had 4 avocados in there, I might use 2 or 3 limes. And also it depends on how strong you like it with lime flavor. Some people love lime juice, and some people are not as big fans. So I'm going to put the juice of 1 lime in my guacamole. Well, I don't know, maybe one. I'm going to start with 1/2 of a lime, and then I'll add more later if I want to, because there was a lot of juice in this lime, and it's only 2 avocados, so I'm not a big fan of really strong lime flavor. Okay, a little goes a long way. Okay, so that's our basic guacamole, and salt. So a couple pinches of salt. That's it. That's basic. If you had this guacamole and nothing else in it, I'm just mashing up any giant pieces of avocado, but I don't really have that many. So now what I like to do is I like to jazz it up a little bit, and I'll be the person, I'm gonna get rid of my fork, I don't really need it anymore. I'm the person who likes to add things to the guacamole, so I would like a little red onion, not too much, and I would like maybe a few scallions, and you know, jalapenos, put a few in there. I'm gonna chop them up. Now my husband, he would hate this. He would, if you have those tableside guacamole, he's no fun because he'll say, oh no, just the lime juice and garlic. And I'm like, oh, put that in, put that in, put this in. Even tomatoes, some guacamoles have tomatoes in them, which I'm not gonna add today, but this is a little cilantro. All right, so I added cilantro and red pepper or red onion and jalapeno and some cilantro. All right, so there it is. There's my guacamole. Have to taste it. Put a spoon out here. Make sure it's good. It needs that other lime. And that's the reason for tasting stuff, is because, you know, you taste it and then you decide whether you want to add more of anything or less of anything. But it has all the good flavors, but it could use that other little hint of lime. So there we go. Now it's perfect. So we have our guacamole ready to go on our nachos. And they're not going to go in the nachos, they're going to go on top, like you'll see. So we got that ready. I had some freshly ground pepper, so I could have added a little freshly ground pepper, but I didn't. Well, let me do that now. I like freshly ground black pepper on stuff. Put that in. Don't need a lot. Okay, so I've got that. So I've got all my topping ingredients over here. And I've got a few other things that I will add. I've got Cashew Sprinkles. It's cashew and nutritional yeast. And it kind of would take the place of tortilla cheese or some kind of, you know, crumbly cheese topping. So we can use that. And then I have some chili dipping powder, which is kind of like the Trader Joe's chili lime sprinkle or any kind of, I think there's one called Tajin that is a red lime chili sprinkle that's really good. And then I have Sriracha hot sea salt, and this is a Fresh Jack's company seasoning, which is really good. I'll probably put some of that on there. I didn't have that at the nacho contest, but if I had, I would have used it because I think it's really good. I'm going to wipe off my cutting board, and I'm going to put my plate, my platter here. So I have this nice platter. I'm going to put my tortilla chips on here. I'm not going to use too many because remember I said this is I don't want to waste a lot of food. So I'm going to use one layer of this. And then remember I have the black beans, a few black beans. And we're gonna do layers of this. We're not gonna do it all. There's gonna be more than one layer. So a little corn. So you don't want to do too many things in the first layer. Then you're gonna put a layer of the tofu sausage. And then we have all of our vegetable toppings. I'm just gonna use my hands because they're clean, and this is gonna be eaten by me. If I were serving it to a crowd now with the way things are, I would probably put gloves on. So I'm taking all these vegetables one at a time, and I'm letting them kind of fall too. I'm not trying to be too neat, because if they come to the side of the plate, that looks pretty. It's not a bad thing for them to kind of drop to the side. And then I've got if you hear a sound that sounds like snoring, my boxer Mochi is on the couch over here. And he must be dreaming really well because I can hear him just snoring up a storm. Okay, so I'm going to take my delicious nacho cheese made from cashews. Oh, and The fact that it has that potato, carrots, and onions gives this a really good flavor. It's different than just cashews and nutritional yeast. Adding the vegetables and the cashews and the nutritional yeast makes all the difference in the world. It's just kind of a really good recipe. But let's say that you have, and this is the crema, cashew crema. Let's say you had people that couldn't eat cashews, nut allergy. What could you do? Well, you could make this sauce and only use carrots and tomatoes. You don't have to use any cashews. So you can make it with carrots and potatoes only. Okay, I have some salsa here. I don't think I'm going to use it, but I just wanted to show you in case you like salsa on your nachos. You could use it in addition, on the side, or you could sprinkle some salsa on there. I'm not going to. I don't think it really needs it, but just to show you different options. Okay, so now we're going to make another layer. Do the same thing. Start with some black beans. And these black beans are so good. I could just eat them as my meal with nothing else. So much better than canned beans. So if you have the time to make your own from scratch black beans, they really are worth the trouble and the time. Okay, so I've got the corn, and remember, the tofu, and the vegetables, onions, a few scallions, and I really like the fresh tomatoes. They look good, but they taste really good. Bell peppers, different color bell peppers, orange, red, yellow. Don't forget the jalapenos. Use them sparingly unless you just love them, because a little goes a long way, okay? Then we got the olives. See how it's kind of developed into a tall situation here. Did I put the corn on? Yeah, I got to put the corn on. Okay, and then we need our sauces. Plenty of cheese. Now I kind of don't overdo the cheese personally, just because I don't, I'm not a fan of too much sauce on anything, but I'm sure there are people that like more cheese. So, this recipe makes a lot, so you can use as much as you like. And then the crema is just supposed to be kind of light. You don't want to overpower with the crema. We can put a little bit of our cilantro on. We haven't put that on yet. And we'll do one more layer, because remember, we want this to be tall. We want it to look impressive. So we'll make one more layer. So we have the effect of the tower of nachos. And you can kind of see that if you had a big crowd, you could create, like I did for the contest, I created like a giant tower of nachos. And it was really impressive looking, so I think that was part of why it was popular. So you could do that if you wanted to, if you had a big crowd of people. And let's say that you didn't want to make a tower. So what other options do you have? Well, you could, hold on for a second. Let me make sure I get all my ingredients. So I had the corn, the black beans, and the tofu sausage. It's not really staying up here very well. I'm making this a little bit so deep that all my toppings are falling off to the side, which is not a problem because we can use our chips to dip. But because I'm making the nachos a little bit skinny and not spreading them out, things are not staying with it. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take the things that have fallen off, and they'll stick to the cheese. So that's my solution. If things start falling off, put a little cheese on there and the cheese will be like glue. Okay, so that's better. And then I'll put my vegetables. I'm going to put a little crema, and things will stick to the crema. We could also squeeze some lime juice on here while we're doing this. I thought that was something we could do. I don't have an extra lime, but let's say in between all these layers, You know, you could take some lime and squeeze it, and that would make it nice. This lime is kind of not very juicy. Okay, so I'm putting my other ingredients on here. Scallions. And then we'll put some of these red Fresno chilies on now. And some of the green jalapenos. That looks pretty good. Oops, one of those fell off. Some red bell peppers. I'm not sure that we have any olives on the top part here. Put some olives on there. Okay, so now the only thing we haven't put on here, that chip is kind of fallen. Stick it back on there. It's kind of like a building, isn't it? Okay, so now what we don't have on here, we don't have our guacamole. So we got to add this guacamole. We went to all that trouble to make it. So what I like to do is I like to put it on top and hope that the whole thing doesn't fall down. I don't think it will. So we don't have to put a lot of it on top, but that kind of makes it look impressive to have that nice tower of guacamole. And then we can add our, my hands are getting kind of messy. We can add some more cilantro. I like to tear it a little bit so it's not, these are kind of big pieces of cilantro. Get some cilantro over the top. And then remember we have our other things. We have our chili lime sprinkle. Put a little bit of that. That looks pretty too. And then I have my Sriracha salt, spicy salt. Tastes really good. And then we have our little cashew cheese, which looks like a little sprinkle, light colored sprinkle. And then if you wanted to go around, and it doesn't really have any of the, you can't really see much crema, so we can take some of the crema and put it on the top because it looks pretty. It's, you know, light colored. And there you have it. There's our super award-winning nachos. You know, it's like a mountain of nachos. And it tastes really good because it has all these fresh vegetables, freshly grilled corn, the tofu, nice, delicious homemade black beans, although you could use other beans. And then of course, I think what really makes it taste special is that good, you know, cheese sauce made from plants and the crema. So I hope you make these nachos. I hope you try to make them. You don't have to use your own homemade chips. You could use any kind of store-bought tortilla chips. Just remember though, my cooking is whole food, plant-based, no oil. So I always have to find a way to make that stuff without oil. However, if you're in a hurry, you could use whatever you want, especially if you're making them for people who don't follow this way of eating that's whole food, plant-based, no oil. So again, enjoy this recipe. I actually think I'm going to be making this at the State Fair of Texas for the celebrity chef stage. So that's something I'm thinking about doing. So that's going to be in October. I'll announce that on my website and on Facebook and social media. But I'll see you all soon. And thanks for watching this video on how to make the award-winning nachos. And I can't wait to dig into these because I've had them before and I know they're going to be good. Thank you so much. And I hope you subscribe to my channel.